So what you're saying is essentially, I just want to get this straight, the purpose of creating the idea of white people was 150% created to divide. That's it.
White people only exist for two purposes: to divide and to dominate.
Mm.
That's it. And we know there are two laws that are really informative about this new assertion of this group called white people, at least as intended by those who first asserted it.
Right.
Okay, so there is a law in Maryland of 1664, and this particular law punished British and other freeborn women who married enslaved Negro men, was the language of the law. And the punishment was pretty severe. The woman is enslaved for the duration of her husband's life. Any children that they have are enslaved. And so the lawmakers claim that the intent of the law is to deter these, quote, shameful matches. They go on to say that these British women clearly must be forgetful of their status, and then go on to explain that the English are, quote, deserving of rights and privileges from which others can be denied, end quote. So we learn in the dicta of that law of 1664, which is the explanation for why they're passing it in the first place, that they view these marriages as an affront to the British people, right? The affront isn't to an individual, which is usually the case, especially in criminal law,
Right.
But rather to a people, a collective people. And it's really important because the opposite happened after they created that law. What happened was those marriages increased. They
skyrocketed.
They didn't decrease.
Despite the harsh punishments.
Well, sure, because put yourself in the position of a plantation owner. What do you think about that law? Woohoo, right?
Right,
Wonderful. As
right.
soon as she says I do, I just gained more, my property value just went up.
Right.
And then if they have children, it goes up more. And
Right.
that's exactly what happened.
Right.
So it wasn't until 1681 that Maryland lawmakers finally amend that law. And it is in this law that we see that English and other white women, it's the first appearance in law that references a group of humanity called white people. But this time they got it right because they punished in the law anyone found to have encouraged the marriage, and also the person who performed the marriage.
Would you be so kind, Dr. Battalora, to tell us about the impetus of that law in 1664?
Sure. Well, an important piece of information to understand is that in both the colonies of Maryland and Virginia, there was a dramatic gender imbalance. There was roughly 8 to 12, depends on whose history you read.
Sure.
Men for every one woman. So a dramatic gender imbalance. Women could have their...
Can you say that one more time? I beg your pardon.
Sure. There were roughly 8 to 12 men for every woman.
Wow.
Yeah, so a huge gender imbalance. And so that likely was part of the impetus for that law that viewed white women who married enslaved men of African descent being perceived as such an affront to these elite British men.
So what you're saying is, I'm just so I can get this correct,
Yeah.
You're essentially saying that the reason why some of these laws, and correct me if I'm wrong, were created was because some of these British elites who had all of their money and all of their power and all of this still were not able to attract or keep the white women that they had. So in response to that, because the majority of the women were still marrying slaves or indentures who were not even of the same social economical status at the time, they created laws that purposely prohibited them from marrying those individuals, kind of like a kid with his own basketball getting mad, taking it and running home when he doesn't get his way. Is that a fair assessment?
Well, it was a piece of it. I think it was a piece of it, but the primary motivation for the invention of this group of humanity called white people was to ensure that the 99% would be divided. So that was absolutely the impetus for the invention of white people. I do think, I can't speak to the personal lives of the initial lawmakers.
Right.
I suspect that they were solid, but I think they viewed it as an affront, seeing these British women marrying an enslaved person. I think in their explanation for the purpose of the law, it's revealed that they saw it as an affront to us British people. Like, why would you marry an enslaved person?
Right.
You know?
Over me.
Yes.
Right.
Over my son, over my...
Right, or whoever.
Right.